Today, I want to share with you about how somatic practice has helped to improve my digestion in two main ways. My name is Dana. I'm an integrative medicine physician. I'm also a somatic coach for the female nervous system. I'm gonna get a little nitty gritty here today. We're gonna get into some details that might be TMI for some people, but I don't know. I love talking about that stuff. I'm very open. But yeah, just so you know, we're gonna talk about things that some people might be uncomfortable with. I was actually excitedly sharing this with my friend from high school, and she said to me, "Dana, you've been so like interested in this thing since high school. Like at the time it was weird, but like now I guess it's important." And I found that so funny because we're talking about poop, by the way. She said I was very interested in poop in high school. I don't remember that, but I could see why that would be true because I've had IBS, which is Irritable Bowel Syndrome, since high school, and an ulcer, which was diagnosed in high school. That should tell you a lot about my stress levels since then, because we know that IBS and peptic ulcer disease does have like a psychosomatic component to it. So, yeah, that should tell you a lot. Anyway, we're gonna get down into the nitty gritty talking about poop. That's like not the major part, but we'll talk about it. In this video, I'm not going to share a specific somatic practice that helped to improve my digestion. Over here, we're not just consuming somatics. It's not just, oh, try this somatic practice and then you'll have perfect digestion for life. Like, that's not how it works. This is very slow, deep, intentional work when you're working with your female nervous system, okay? So this is not going to be some prescriptive practice to help you with your IBS or your constipation, okay? So I do have IBS, as I've mentioned before. I have mixed IBS, both IBS-C and IBS-D. And in the recent past, I've actually taken fiber supplements on and off, never consistently, because they do help, but I was taking psyllium, which, I don't know, it caused a weird change in the look, and I would still have the urgency. But psyllium husk which is an insoluble fiber, psyllium husk is a part of the conventional medical treatment for IBS. So if you do have IBS, that is a good option to consider. As well as just a high fiber diet in general, as well as somatics. I have been working with a somatic experiencing practitioner, specifically one who has developed a modality for the female nervous system. Somatic experiencing it's a somatic modality, somatic meaning of the body, a modality developed by Dr. Peter Levine, and the concept is that our body, or soma, holds a lot of our experiences. It holds our emotions, and it's through slowly getting into that experience that we're able to transmute some of them. So if you've had a traumatic experience, it's held in your body technically, and there's ways to get into it and work through it so that it can be released back into your natural, normal life force energy. Your life force energy is what you use to eat, to sleep, to digest your food, to create, to reproduce. That is life force energy. And when you've gone through some amount of trauma, then if you haven't digested the trauma, you're using your life force energy to kind of suppress it. And so you end up having less life force energy to do the things your body actually really needs to do, like digest, heal, grow, and reproduce. So somatic experiencing was developed to help digest or transmute traumatic experiences. And then my teacher, Veronica from Waking Womb, applied that methodology specifically to the female nervous system, taking into consideration the fact that our nervous system fluctuates with our cycle. So, yeah, your menstrual cycle is important for your nervous system. Particularly when working with the female nervous system in somatics, oxytocin is very important. Oxytocin, which is what we call the love hormone, it's produced by the hypothalamus, released by the pituitary, which are two glands in the brain. It's also produced by your heart. And your uterus also has oxytocin receptors, obviously. Well, I don't know if that's obvious, but your uterus has oxytocin receptors and also produces oxytocin locally. You can elicit oxytocin by touch on the skin as well, which is our largest organ, specifically with a very slow, light brushing stroke. A slow type of touch elicits oxytocin. So that oxytocin, which you also elicit through connection to yourself and connection to others, through orgasm, through mothers have it when they're breastfeeding. Oxytocin is released during labor and delivery. It's more than just the love hormone. It's a whole lot more than that. For us specifically, it's a very important underlying hormone for our nervous system which runs all of our other systems, or digestive system or endocrine system, which a lot of us have issues with, or hormones and our gut, don't we? So our nervous system working properly is what underlies all of that. And specifically for women, we need more oxytocin. We need to be consistently having a relationship to eliciting slow oxytocin through our body in order for our nervous system to be doing its actual job of running our body, as well as transmuting and digesting and feeling past experiences and emotions in our body. Okay? So, I hope that's clear. And somatics isn't about releasing trapped emotions that are in the body. Kind of how I explained it earlier, it's more so if you're having an experience that's uncomfortable and your body doesn't currently have the capacity for you to feel it, your nervous system will very intelligently shut down the sensations, or like avert your energy away from it to other things. We tend to be more in our mind and more in the external, and we're not really paying attention to what's happening in our internal landscape. And we can think of this as dissociation, whether it's mild or really severe, and it's a protective mechanism that our nervous system employs whenever it senses that we don't have the capacity to feel the actual sensation that's there at that time. So it's an intelligent response, and we can work with it. We can increase that capacity by slowly adding oxytocin to our system by doing the somatic practices. Essentially, what having enough oxytocin does is that it lets your body know that it's safe enough to digest now. If you have a basic idea of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system having two main branches, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic branches. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. Sympathetic is fight and flight. A lot of us are overly oriented to the fight and flight because of just chronically being stressed at a low level or even high level at work and school and home. A lot of us are stressed. Stress is a big thing. We know this. And so a lot of us are more sympathetic dominant, and we don't really get the chance to come more into a parasympathetic state. And it's not one or the other. We are both at the same time. At the same time in your body, you have sympathetic actions that are happening and parasympathetic actions. So it's not one or the other. However, we kind of do, as women, have a deficiency of that healthy parasympathetic energy, which is safe, feeling safe and social, your ability to rest and digest, your food, your emotions, and to thrive and heal and reproduce. So healthy parasympathetic tone is what supports all of that. What oxytocin does is that oxytocin causes, like oxytocin release in the context of somatic practice, will cause parasympathetic downregulation. It's not that oxytocin always does that, because obviously oxytocin being released for the uterus to contract during delivery, like that's a very sympathetic action. Okay, so it's none of this is black or white, black and white, but the main purpose of working with oxytocin is to stimulate that down-regulatory parasympathetic response. Oxytocin says to the body, hey, we are safe enough. I'm looking around. We are safe enough. We can digest this food. we can digest this emotion. We can digest the experience around us and find something pleasurable in it to look at, to feel, to hear. Now, there are different points in our cycle when oxytocin is needed more because we have more of that sympathetic drive going. So, as a woman, you should already know this, you're not the same woman every single week of your cycle. Something changes. You might not be able to feel the change, especially if you're more overly oriented to the sympathetic side. Everything might just feel blah, might feel the same. Or you might be able to feel extreme exhaustion whenever you are exhausted. But once we come more into rhythm with the cycle of our nervous system, we can start to feel the ups and downs a little bit better. So when we're luteal, which is after we ovulate, and when we're menstrual, which is when we're bleeding, we do have that sympathetic overdrive. Luteal, specifically the late luteal, when progesterone begins to drop in preparation for or bleed. There are other points along the continuum of being a woman where we have more sympathetic overdrive, which more sympathetic dominance or sympathetic tone. But I won't get into the nitty-gritty of that today. We're just talking about the menstrual cycle. So in the luteal and the menstrual phase, you need more oxytocin. But every day, you need oxytocin. So through adding oxytocin, intentionally eliciting oxytocin through somatic practices by having our hands on our body or forming connection to ourselves or connection to others, then we're able to gently elicit this slow, consistent oxytocin. And what oxytocin feels like inside your body is pleasurable or even neutral sensations. They might begin to open up the more you do a practice. So it can feel like a sensation, or sometimes an emotion might come up, or a memory might pop up, or you might notice that the quality of your thoughts might change when oxytocin is being elicited. And most of us are dissociated from the internal sensations of our body, which would make sense for us because a lot of us go through even micro traumatic experiences that we're not supported through. And so every single thing you've experienced that hasn't been witnessed empathically or empathetically by someone else, or that you haven't had the capacity to feel, it's there somewhere. And this isn't to say, oh, I have to go digging in for all the traumatic things I've experienced. That's not what somatics is about. It's about slowly reorienting to what does good feel like in my body. Now, all of this sounds abstract. Trust me, when I was learning it for the first few months, I was like, wait, what? Pleasure? Like, that just feels very, very far away for me. And so I had to take it a little bit more nitty gritty and granular and just like back to basics, okay? My notes are so long and they're hard to read because it's detailed. Next time I'll just make like a bullet list because this bullet list is very long. Like I feel the need to just talk, but then like I'm not gonna read all that. Anyway, so let's get to the basics of somatics, which is something that took me a while to understand. There is something called interoception. Interoception is your ability to feel your body's sensations. So because I was learning somatics from a pleasure-based focus, I was thinking, oh, I need to feel the pleasure sensations in my body. But it was even more simple than that. I need to be paying attention to interoception in my body. So that is the ability to feel when you are hungry, feel when you are thirsty, to feel when you need to go pee, when you need to go poop. That's like basic interoception. And then of course there's something which I was really good at. I'm really good at like negative interoception. I can feel the headache and I can feel the bloating or distension. I can feel the joint pain, anything like that. Like I'm so good at picking that up. So I noticed I was overly oriented to that. But simple interoceptive things like knowing when I'm hungry, knowing when to go pee, things like that, they would only become apparent to me once they were really urgent or extreme, which I think is because of ADHD. I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but if you're neurodivergent folks tend to struggle with their interoception. It's not even that they're not feeling it, it's just that it's sometimes a lot, and so they orient to something else protectively. And so I've been having this since I was much younger. I've noticed that I only know when I want to pee when it's like really urgent. Same thing when I want to poop. I don't know when I'm hungry. I just feel really irritable and like dysregulated. And depending on where I'm in my cycle, I might cry because I'm hungry. I'm like, what's going on? I would just go into a zone and like forget to eat, or I would delay eating until after I'm finished a task, especially work. Like, I never used to eat lunch at work, which is really bad, by the way, but I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I never used to eat lunch at work. If you don't eat lunch at work, don't feel bad. But there's a way that you can work with it. There's a way that I worked with it. Soon get there. So once I realized that, maybe I have ADHD for real, and maybe that's why I'm struggling with this whole pleasure interoception thing. So I took it down really simple to just being able to interocept hunger cues. So what I noticed is that the more somatic practice I did, is the more other sensations would open up in my body. I would feel a tummy gurgle here or there. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's always a good sign. Like if you have a hunger cue coming up, if you have a sensation in your intestines while doing somatic practice, that is a good sign. And so after making the mental connection that, hey, I'm starting to feel more sensation when I do practice, I then began to pay attention to it. And then also knowing that I have like trouble interocepting hunger, I decided, okay, I need some mental help as well. I need to, when I eat breakfast, because I consistently eat breakfast before work, I need to notice when I'm hungry and then plan to eat at that time. And so that's what I started doing. So I started by having an external cue to know when I need to eat. So I would know that on the dot after 4 hours, I'd be hungry. I'd feel the sensation of my stomach being empty and I would begin to get irritable. Firstly, I never felt the hungry sensation. I just noticed, oh, I'm irritable. Like I'm getting irritable at this patient by 1 or 2 p.m. I'd be like, oh, okay. And then I would sometimes have a headache, sometimes have brain fog, sometimes move slowly. I didn't know that was because of hunger. I thought I was just tired and I needed to get through the workday. But I just continued, like without stopping to eat, mostly because I didn't prepare to bring a meal with. Once I realized, hey, you're getting hungry at work, I decided mentally at first, okay, I need to eat lunch. And so I started bringing lunch to work, inconsistently at first. But as I started to prioritize it more and eat lunch more, I realized that I couldn't go the day without eating lunch. Like if I had breakfast, I would need to eat lunch by a certain time because I was consistently noticing, oh, my stomach is empty. I feel like eating now. What I would do is I used to delay eating until I felt like I had seen a certain amount of patients because we don't have an appointments. We have appointments, but they're not time slotted appointments. So everyone is there from in the morning and we're trying to get everyone seen in a reasonable amount of time. And so I would try to rush through the day every single day, which is another symptom of sympathetic dominance. But anyway, I decided, oh, intellectually, I need to eat lunch. But after the intellectual decision came the information from my body, which was, hey, if you don't eat, like if you ignore this first tummy gurgle that says, hey, stomach is empty, you then begin to lose your patience. You then become irritable. You then feel like when you're asked a question or consistently bombarded by somebody coming to your door or being overstimulated, like it gets overwhelming much more quickly if you don't eat. Then I realized, oh, I'm getting hungry. Let me prevent a disaster by eating lunch. And so for the past few weeks, I've been consistently preparing meals on a Sunday, simple meals. I try not to make it too fancy. Some of them were fancy, but my aim is consistency because fed is best. Like in the beginning, like I'm not focusing on, oh, let me prioritize this, and that. I just need to have a meal, a warm meal. It doesn't have to be warm for you, but for me, I wanted it to be a warm meal that I just get up, I go to the staff room, I'll microwave it and then eat it and then go again. That's what it had to be for me, a full meal, not a snack. if you're in a certain scenario where you can't do that, you might have to adjust it and bring a snack with you instead. So with doing that consistently, I began to feel my hunger cues more and eat more on time. And then I would realize that when I got home, I'd become hungry a little more early than I usually would, because I used to have lunch at maybe 3 or 4 and then dinner really late. But because I'm having my lunch earlier, 4 hours later, like clockwork, I need to have dinner. Okay? So I started to regularize the way I was eating. It never used to be like that. In fact, I've had a therapist 2 years ago tell me that I need to have lunch. And then in the follow-up session, she's like, "Oh, how have you been doing with that?" And I was like, not at all. What do you mean have lunch? Like, when I get to work, I just want to finish the work and leave by XYZ time. I'm not thinking about lunch. And so I didn't like that. And I ghosted her because, yeah, why would you tell me to have lunch, right? Like, why would you tell me something to help myself? But now I don't need a therapist to tell me to eat lunch, because my body will tell me. And I'm going to listen, because I know that if I don't listen, I'm going to find out. My mood's going to dip. I'm going to get irritable. I'm going to feel like I don't have capacity. And so the baseline of nervous system regulation, you could be on all the supplements for sleep, for fiber, for digestion. If you're not literally feeling your hunger cues, feeding yourself when you're hungry, like, that's the most basic thing. This is before even getting into, oh, I must eat this specific thing for my digestion. And I used to do that. I still kind of do that now. I've known that I've had digestive issues, and I've tried many things. I've tried to make bone broth at home, which I still do sometimes. I've tried to make kefir. I've made this specific homemade yogurt with a specific strain of lactobacillus reuteri. There's things that I do that are kind of biohacky, right? But that doesn't work for a nervous system. The biohacking doesn't work. You need the energy in your body, the life force energy in your body, to do just the basic things, pretty much. I'm gonna pause this to see if you can still see me despite the sun behind me. Then I'll continue. I mean, the sun is kind of in the background, but you can still see, so I'll continue. Where was I? Yeah, so it's not about biohacking your body with like the best supplements or take this for that. This is on a more fundamental and structural level. And I definitely believe that my work with my own somatic practice, as well as with my somatic therapist or practitioner, is what has helped me to become more aware of these very, very basic fundamentals and feed myself properly. Like, that's at the basis of everything. If you're not feeding yourself properly, if you're not interocepting your hunger cues, then how are we going to even work on the bloating and the pain and the other digestive issues and the constipation and the diarrhea? Like, it might feel, honestly, and when you're having symptoms like that and they're very, very loud, especially diarrhea, it would be helpful to take something that would just help to stop that immediately, right? So I'm not saying supplements aren't useful. I definitely could see a place for fiber supplementation in the future. I might continue that if I need it. But now I know that it's not just about what we're putting into our body. It's about what we do in our body with what we've given to it. So you can take all the supplements, which will bulk up your stool or whatever else it will do. But the actual action of your body taking that food and digesting it, like, the supplement won't do that. Your nervous system will. Like, your body is what will do that. Of course, you can take medications that might help it along, like a laxative or whatever else. But that's not your body. that's the mechanism of action of the external medication. Now, into the next thing that I noticed. In about the 3rd week of feeding myself properly, I noticed something else with my digestion change. But let me go back to that 1st week. The 1st week was not perfect. Remember, I was doing a fed is best approach. As a matter of fact, I even deliberately made chili. I was like, chili's gonna be high protein, high fiber. I added beans. It was made with tomato sauce, and all the good stuff for like a normal person who like assimilates their food properly. I found out that those weren't the best for me though, because I have a long history of atopy. I had asthma as a child, eczema as a child, and eczema as an adult as well. So I know that I'm not very tolerant to histamine. I've found this out over time. And then over time, I've also found out that different foods have more histamine in them. And so basically, I made a histamine soup for that first week. And when I was hungry, I was there eating that histamine soup, and I was able to feel the sensations that histamine soup caused. Either a headache very soon, or a stomach ache, or urgency to evacuate the bowels. All those things would happen from eating my food with whole heap of histamine. But I ate it anyways, consistently. And then when my body no longer wanted it, like on the fifth day, I was like, okay, I don't want to eat this. I'll eat something else, right? But the first week was kind of wonky. I just wanted to feed myself, and I was feeling the effects of eating something that I didn't really tolerate very well. But the second week was so much better. By the third week, I noticed that my poop was getting much better. My poop was getting better. Remember, I have IBS. I didn't even specifically prepare vegetables in my meal prep to lunch. I would have some veg for dinner, but like it still wasn't every day. I'm a doctor. Have your veg and fruit every day. But just to say, I wasn't specifically focusing on fiber in the way that I probably should be doing, right? I even skipped like a one meal before this happened. But I noticed that one day I went to work, I had breakfast, I had lunch, and then I went home and the urgency to use the bathroom came. But it wasn't this extreme urgency like I usually have with pain. Like, actually, it kind of was, but it wasn't as bad as it usually is because I have IBS. And then when I went to the bathroom, boom, Bristol 4. Do you know what a Bristol 4 is? Like, I don't even know if I've ever had that before. I've had a 3, I've had a weird looking thing from having psyllium, but a Bristol 4? That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. After not focusing on fiber, after not taking psyllium husk, not doing anything specifically for constipation, I just had a Bristol 4 out of nowhere. And I was like, that's interesting. That's cool. And, I think the physiology behind this and like consistently feeding myself is that when you eat, you stimulate a large peristaltic wave called the migrating motor complex. So when you eat, you swallow, it goes into your stomach. The peristalsis, or the contraction that moves the food along, starts from your stomach and goes all the way to your anus. That's why when you eat, sometimes you need to use the bathroom right after. And so I was consistently stimulating that migrating motor complex through feeding myself consistently. And then also decreasing the foods that were irritative, like not deliberately, but it just ended up happening. Like I just started I didn't need it to be this big grand thing where, I must have this, and that for meal prep. No, I just needed lunch. So I made lunch. And through consistently eating lunch, I was able to feel my hunger cues more. And then not only that, have a Bristol 4? No, go look up the chart right now. Okay? So for some of us, that's not normal. For some of us, that does not come without help. Okay? And it's just so funny because the week before, I had a really great session with my somatic practitioner. I was ovulatory, and I noticed when I'm ovulating, I definitely have more capacity for sensation. And so I was feeling a lot more in our session, and we're able to even go into more activating sensations and kind of slowly digest some of those. And I'm not like correlating the two because, correlation is not causation. Well, I am correlating the two. I'm just not saying it's causative. But I find it interesting that that happened after that somatic session. The hunger cues thing was already consistent because I went to the session reporting to her, hey, Veronica, I'm feeling my hunger cues. That's remarkable. And then the week after the session, that's when I noticed the stool change. brilliant. I'm not making medical claims here. I'm not saying, oh, do this somatic practice to improve your digestion. I'm explaining my personal journey of how working with somatics has helped me to improve my digestion. And I am somebody who is like very health focused, and the reason for that is because I have felt a lack of health in my body. And so I'm always looking for ways to improve that. And everything I've tried is like an external thing. Like, oh, take this thing, take this supplement, do this procedure. Some of them work, but nothing has had like sustained change for me. And I still have a lot of sustained change to make. But I am over the moon. I am delighted to find out that I now can tell when I'm hungry and feed myself consistently because of that skill. And I say skill because not everyone has that. And it's mostly women I know who lack this skill, by the way. A lot of female patients come to me and they say that they skip breakfast because they don't feel hungry, but they feed their kids. I'm like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean you make breakfast for them, but you don't eat because you don't feel hungry? My mother also does not eat breakfast and only eats when she feels like it. And I just wonder how many of us are just not feeling the hunger because we don't have that much awareness of our internal landscape, which of course would come from not having the capacity to be aware of our internal landscape, because so much of our life force energy is focused on suppressing what's painful, what's traumatic, and it's really trying to run the systems, the important systems. It's trying to run what's left on so little. So we don't have the capacity to pay attention to even that, even though it's important, because we're still running away from the trauma that is still in our body. We're still running in survival mode. So we're barely functioning. We're not thriving. We're just barely functioning and having a chronic level of just dysregulation. So I just wonder how many women don't feel hungry because of that. Anyway, takeaway from this video, definitely have breakfast, but also after breakfast, don't skip lunch. Listen to your body and trust the hunger cue. And if you have ADHD, be prepared for the hunger cue, because then when you get hungry and you don't have much time to sort something out, like it gets hard to make a decision about what you're going to have if you haven't prepared beforehand. So that's definitely helpful. It doesn't have to be meal prep, or it doesn't have to be a meal plan. Just find a way to have food readily accessible to you when you need it. It's very important for just the basic running of your body and also for nervous system regulation. There is nothing that can regulate you if you're not even having the basic inputs of food regularly. So yeah, that's my story of how somatic practice over the past few months has improved my digestion. It feels like a breakthrough for me, and yeah, I'm very excited about it. I am currently not offering one-on-one somatic sessions, but I do integrate some somatic practice as well as female nervous system and menstrual cycle education into my sessions with patients whenever I do have time, as well as with friends, my nieces, anybody around me. I might just do a quick somatic practice with them, but I don't offer this. I'm not a somatic experiencing practitioner. If you think that you have like a chronic low level dysregulation and you have the sense that somatic therapy might help you, then I can direct you to a list of practitioners who have been trained by my teacher in somatics for the female nervous system. You can also see my teacher as well, but she has a very long wait list. But I will put the link for the practitioner directory down below if you want to try out somatics for the female nervous system. Also, in the next few months, I'll be opening up one-on-one integrative health coaching sessions for women who identify as high functioning, but they have a low level chronic dysregulation. You might have cycle irregularities, energy level issues, PMS, PMOS, PMDD, endometriosis. I would love to support you with the modalities that I have an interest in. So if you're interested in that, then I have a link below for you to join the waitlist and join my newsletter to hear first about my offerings. I'd love to support you and see you in the next video. Bye.